I know that many cosplayers, if not all cosplayers, have a list of characters that they will not cosplay. And there could be a variety of reasons why that is. Whether it's because they may not like to cosplay more revealing characters, or they simply just don't like the design. But have you ever decided to absolutely never cosplay a character, but have really no specific reason why? Well, that was me with Storm. Hello, hi, my name is Morgan, also known as Cosplay. I make all things crafty and cosplay related. And if that sounds interesting to you, feel free to hop on the subscribe button. I would love it if you stick around. Storm's original design and subsequent designs after that was something that never really attracted me, specifically at the beginning of my cosplay career when I decided that I was never going to cosplay her. At the time, in like 2016, 2017, I was really into cosplaying nostalgia characters and or characters whose designs attracted me aesthetically. Let's be real, I am still that way, but I'm a little bit more open-minded now. Storm's design never really hit either of those. I was very indifferent towards her. She wasn't my favorite in Marvel and she wasn't my favorite in X-Men. So I really had no need to cosplay her, and I felt like I just wasn't ever going to cosplay her. And that remained true for the majority of my cosplay career up until the end of 2023 when I came across her Asgardian version. This design is also known as the Goddess of Thunder or the Queen of Asgard, and it appeared first in 1990 in Volume 2 of Marvel's What If series. This whole series is based around alternative universes or alternative timelines, like what would happen if someone else received someone's weapon or powers or things like that. In this timeline, Storm is actually the ruler of Asgard, which is Thor's home realm, and has access to Odin Force, which is Odin's power that he had before his death that was passed to Storm when she became the ruler of Asgard. In this alternate reality, Storm is also given her own hammer called Stormcaster, which is given the ability to mimic Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, by Loki. Like Storm's original design, there have been many reiterations of this version, the Goddess of Thunder version, since the 1990 debut, but the one that caught my attention the most was in volume 25 of X-Men Gold that was released in 2017. While I used this version to base a majority of my cosplay, I also took my own creative liberties with it, so it is still a little bit different, and I'm really happy with the details, honestly. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get into the construction. Like I said, I had a lot of ideas rolling around in my mind when I first discovered this design. It really sparked the creative side of me, and I knew I wanted to add so many little intricate details into it. So I decided to go with the foam and prop work first.
Starting off with Stormcaster, I went ahead and took creative liberty on the shape. The original Stormcaster has a pointed end, which I really wasn't a fan of, so I decided to go with the basic box shape that we see in Thor's hammer. I made a basic paper template using measurements that I found based off of a replica of Thor's hammer online, and then transferred all of those pieces into 4mm EVA foam. I really wanted to use only what I had in my stash and not purchase any new foam specifically for this project. So for the beveled edges, instead of making them a continuous angled piece, I separated the strips and the triangles into individual pieces, which I later beveled down and glued together. In order to get the nice clean bends on the main hammerhead body, I took an X-Acto knife and cut some really thin channels on the back side of the foam, making sure not to cut all the way through, but just enough so where when you bend the foam, you have this perfect edge. And before assembling, I made sure to mark and cut out where the handle would go. That is very important. Also here you can see those channels that I created in the back of the foam. Then it was finally time to start gluing all those pieces together. I started by gluing together those channels that I had cut in the back of the foam, and then adding the bevel edges with the sides. So actually, scratch that. So as I was starting to glue things together, I decided that I wanted to make the hammer glow. I decided on having a cracking effect, but in the center, it'll be a punched out version of Storm's crown from her original design. So I did a sketch based off of some references I found online and then transfer that over to the foam. Once it was cut out, I hit it with a quick blast from my heat gun. Be careful when you're doing this because I did in fact burn part of the foam. Moving on to the side beveled pieces of the hammer, I knew I wanted to incorporate a lot of Celtic knots throughout this build, and I thought this would be a good place to incorporate a few. So I traced out this long Celtic knot and then cut it out with my X-Acto knife. I then traced it onto all 8 of the pieces that go on the sides of the hammer, and then used my soldering iron to burn away all of the negative spaces in the design. This makes it so that the Celtic knot design has a raised effect. I also decided with this method because I thought it would be the closest way to replicate like hammered metal. Okay, so I have salvaged some PVC because I didn't want to go to the store, so I ripped something apart. The plan is to use this T connector and these two 90-degree connectors and make kind of a Y shape inside the hammerhead before I attach the decorative trim that you just saw me do. And then I'm gonna have to do the lights too before I close everything up. So that is gonna be the next step. My head is chopped off. Yes, that is what we're gonna do next. So I gotta bust out the PVC cutters so we can chop this up. Okay, I'm on the floor. So the plan is to cut this a foot length because based off of the references that I found, most say that the handle is a foot long. So that's what I'm gonna go with. We're gonna cut this. And I might cut it a little bit shorter to take into consideration the little like half circle that is at the very bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna do my best to try and explain how I did the inner piece here for the diffusion of the lights. So basically what I have is 2 different layers of like diffusion foam, and on top of it there is a blue transparent piece. This first layer of translucent foam is painted gold, and then with the blue it looks a little bit more silver to hopefully match with the rest of the hammer. But in between those 2 insulation foams on the inside here is a small cutout of Storm's crown, and it's black. So when you put the lights in, let's see if I can do this. I'm just gonna roll these up real quick, put this behind, see if that stays. So when the lights are in, you can see her crown glowing from underneath. I think it's a pretty cool effect. Once I had the lights assembled, I was able to close up the hammerhead, clean up the edges, and start adding the details to the handle. On the top and the bottom of the handle, I added these little strips with lightning bolts, and at the very base, there is an X-Men logo, which I didn't show. I primed the whole thing with a few layers of Plasti Dip, gave it a nice coat of silver spray paint, and then went in to start weathering. For silver colors, you want to use more of a black-based weathering color. I did this to add more depth to the Celtic knots, and I also knew that I wanted to go back later and paint them gold, so I wanted to do this first so I didn't get any black on the gold paint. I finished off the paint job with adding all of those gold details, so like I said before, I painted those Celtic knots gold. I also painted the little lightning bolts on the handles gold, as well as the X-Men logo on the very base of the hammer. I forgot to mention this before, but I also created a hole in the top of the hammerhead to make it easy to access the battery pack for the lights, and so that they weren't floating around, jumping around inside the hammerhead itself, I made a little pouch out of some scrap fabric and glued that to the top of the little cover that I had for the hole. All that was left for the hammer was to add a nice pleather grip. Again, this was just something that I had in my stash, and I wrapped it around, trying to make it even. Don't look too close, the lines are a little bit wobbly, but that was it for the hammer. Moving on to the head wings, I started again with a sketch. You can see it on the side there. Once I was happy with all of the details that I knew I was going to include, I then wanted to make a base. The head wings needed to be light enough to sit on my head, but also still structurally sound enough to hold their own shape. So I went with a base of Warbler. And then for the headband piece itself, I decided to sandwich a metal headband in between to make it even more structurally sound. From there, I started cutting out and assembling those pieces, which I completely forgot to film. But here you can see I stopped halfway through to start sketching out the patterns and the details that I wanted to include on the head wings. And then I broke out my soldering iron again to continue to burn those details in before I finally assembled the wings completely. For the head wing specifically, I took a lot of inspiration from Tiffany Gordon Cosplay and her Lady Thora build, but I still want to include a lot of Storm motifs, so you can see those tiny little lightning bolts, and I also included her crown in the head wings as well. I will also link Tiffany's video down below just in case you want to check that out. Once all the details were completed, I was able to fully assemble the head wings and then glue them onto the Warbler base. I quickly made some shoulder armor by making a quick duct tape pattern, cutting them out of 4mm EVA foam and assembling them together. And then the head wings and the shoulders got the same treatment as the hammer. I kept the shoulders silver with a black detail painting, and the wings got the same raised gold detailing as the hammer. And we are finally moving on to the bodysuit. And I know this looks absolutely insane, but I wanted a very particular body shape, and my Mystique bodysuit has been slightly augmented to get that body shape. So I put that on and then did a duct tape pattern on my body and then traced out all of the pieces for the bodysuit. I'm gonna be so real when I tell you guys that this was so hot. The duct tape and the saran wrap literally don't breathe, and then having another bodysuit on top of that, oh my gosh, I was dying. Okay, hello, hi, welcome to my floor. My hair is a mess. I just got home from work. I've been sewing for the last maybe 30 minutes trying to finish up the bodysuit. So I hit a bit of a dilemma. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do to make like the metal reflective armor on her arms and legs. It's almost like a disco ball. So I tried to find fabric that I thought would work, and I couldn't find anything where the squares were big enough. So that was out. And then I stumbled upon these sew-on little mirrors, which I thought would work. But once I did the math of how much it would cost, oh boy, was it a lot. Oh boy, was it a lot. So that's not gonna work either. So what I ended up doing is buying a bunch of these 1-inch squares. And I thought that I'd be able to potentially glue the squares onto the fabric. But every glue I try, besides like just using straight up contact cement or hot glue, is like not working. I would use contact cement, but that doesn't really go well with fabric like this, like that. I don't know. It just feels wrong. And I would have to coat the entire arms and legs in contact cement, and that sounds like a nightmare and a waste of contact cement. So my plan is to drill holes in all of these and make them sewable, because they're just plastic little tiles, so I should be able to do it. I laid out one of the arms, and it's going to take about 150-ish tiles to cover up one arm, so I'm going to try and get 300 to 400 tiles done tonight. That's excluding how many I'm going to have to do for the legs. And I also should point out that I leave for con in like 3 days, so I really got to get going. So I'm going to stop chatting with you guys and I'm going to get drilling. Let's do this. Hello. It is the next morning, and we have to change plans again. So last night I had the plan to drill the holes. I drilled holes in probably like 150, of those little squares. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should try to test to sew them on first before I drill holes in every single one of them. So that's what I did. I can grab you what it looks like. Hold on. I literally was so upset I didn't even cut the needle off of this. But so this is what it was looking like, which was not bad, but when you stretch it, when you stretch it, hold on, let me see if I could do this. There's huge gaps, and I couldn't figure out how to sew it on without like having those gaps like that. So we're back to resorting to glue. I also didn't like the holes. It's not terrible, but it's not quite right. So we're back to glue. I went to Instagram and I put out a question on my story to see if somebody could help me. And my beautiful, lovely, wonderful, amazing friend and craftsman, Populas Cos, I will literally put her at link in the bio so you could go follow her on Instagram because she literally saved my hiney. Suggested E6000 for this particular fabric. So we're gonna do a test run and fingers crossed that it works because I also tried to test contact cement as well as Gorilla Super Glue last night and they were holding but just not like they were too easy to peel off. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that. Fingers crossed it works. While it's drying, I'm going to finish sewing the bodysuit together now that I know that I can glue the squares on post sewage. Yeah, and I'm gonna stop talking like this because it's starting to hurt my back. Okay, new plan. Fingers crossed it works. I leave in 2 days. So I finished sewing the entire bodysuit together and then it was time to get to work adding all of those tiles. I don't even remember how long this took me, but I do know I did like 5 or 6 hours that day, and then the day before I left I had to do another handful of hours, so it was probably well over 10 hours, but honestly, to be a walking disco ball, it was totally worth it. To finish up this build, I went ahead and painted these brown gloves that I had on stash. They're like a powdery blue, and that matches with the cape that I made, which I totally forgot to film, but there's a cape, I swear. I also decided at the convention that I didn't really like these gloves, even though they're accurate to the design. They're way too big for my hands, so I decided to forego them and just rock bare hands.
So if you've made it this far into the video, you're probably wondering that there has to be more behind the title of this video than what I have led on so far. Or it could be clickbait. Don't worry. Don't worry. I promise it's not. So far, I've shared at most just an indifference towards Storm as a character. I never really thought I hated her nor liked her enough to really have an emotional opinion on her. That was honestly until I started growing as a cosplayer and into my own confidence as a person. Once I stopped caring about what other people thought about me or my cosplays, it allowed me to uncover the true meaning as to why I had decided so strongly to never cosplay Storm. Black cosplayers and other cosplayers of color often have their cosplays critiqued absolutely so heavily, strictly based on the color of their skin. Online, we're often called horrible names or the black version of whatever character we've decided to cosplay. We're told that we should only cosplay characters that match our skin color, and honestly, that puts us in a box and really shuts down our creative outlet. It doesn't allow us to enjoy this hobby in its truest form. As a Black woman who wasn't really secure in themselves when I first started cosplaying, I was being constantly told what characters I should and shouldn't cosplay online. And the one that I was receiving the most that I should be cosplaying was Storm. In all sadness, but in all fairness, Storm has kind of become the default character for Black women. And it made me feel that she was the only character that I could cosplay that would be deemed valid in the eyes of the public. And that is simply just not the case. It took me a really, really long time to internalize that the characters that I cosplay, I am cosplaying for myself and nobody else. And I shouldn't let anybody's suggestions or opinions online skew how I feel or should feel or the potential to feel towards a character. And on that note, here's the final reveal of the cosplay of the character that I swore I would never cosplay, but did, simply because I wanted to. And there you have it. I'm honestly so ecstatic that I stumbled across the design, because without it, I would have never learned just how incredible and powerful Storm is as a character. And I can't wait to dig more into her backstory as I read more of her comics or more of her storylines. I really hope this tutorial helped you learn some tips and tricks for your next cosplay. But if there's anything I would love for you to take away from this video, is that cosplay is for everybody and for every body. It does not matter your race, your gender, your body type. Cosplay the character that you want to cosplay because you want to cosplay it. At the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of nerds playing dress up, so just do it for you. Thank you guys so much if you made it this far. I know it was a long one. I wish I would have split it up in chunks, but unfortunately, I just didn't plan it out that way. This was my first kind of talking head video and more personal video and more full-length cosplay tutorial video. So I'm a little bit nervous about it, excited. So please let me know what you guys thought about this video down below. Please let me know if there's a character that you swore you would never cosplay before and you changed your mind. Let me know the reason why. I would love to hear. Please let me know some tips to make videos like this better. Like I said, this was my first like really long cosplay tutorial, which I've honestly been sitting on for months because I was so scared to edit it. So let me know. Please help me. Be nice though. Before I bring this video to a close, I would like to give a quick thank you to my patrons. You can check out my Patreon. I'll have a link down below, and you can get access to exclusive content for as little as $1. If you would like to see even more of my face, feel free to check out my Instagram. I do a lot of polls there and ask questions, and you'll get some sneak peeks of what I'm working on before they get posted on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, feel free to head on over there. If you like this video, please give it a like. And please share. I'm honestly so proud of this video. So I would love more eyes to see it. So if you know anyone in your life that you think would find this interesting, please send it their way. And if you want to see even more crafty and cosplay content, feel free to hop on that subscribe button. I would love to have you in my little corner of the internet. With all that being said, thank you so much again for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.